Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Breaking Through, the Alina Abovian podcast. This is another deeply personal and honest conversation with my dear friend Tato Torosyan. She's a fellow divorcee, single mom, and entrepreneur. In this episode, we go into the very difficult discussion of when to know when your relationship is finally over. What does grieving a marriage look and feel like? How do you find yourself again? How do you heal? How do you break the news to your kids, and how do you build your life back up again? Special thanks to my dear friend T, who bravely tackled these issues on this podcast. I hope you find this episode helpful, meaningful in your own healing journey. So I did promise some real talk on this podcast, and of course, what better person to have real talk with than someone who's one of your really, really good girlfriends. You guys, please welcome Tato Torosyan.
Hi, everyone.
She is a good friend of mine, but a new friend. And this is something you and I were talking about the other day, where it's like you meet people, or at least call certain people into your life at just the right time. You and I met like 3 years ago. You were going through your divorce. I was still married, but I was, kind of in that process. And I swear it's like I just manifested our friendship.
I love it, though.
I remember I was at your place getting the infrared wraps.
But you were asking so many questions that I was like,
Right. What's going on?
Yeah, but I obviously didn't push because you just don't.
Right. Okay. So before we get into all the fun stuff, tell people a little bit about you. What's your 411?
I'm a medical spa owner in the Los Angeles area. We are located actually in Montrose. Our med spa's name is Skin Deep LA. Our medical provider is Dr. Pat. He's an amazing injector. And we specialize in everything from weight loss to beautifying people to even like therapy, honestly, because all our clients become our friends at some point.
Totally.
And we get to know everybody on a deeper level, and I guess that makes us a little more different than anyone else. And you were a client and you became a friend of mine. See, like it
yeah, you can't get rid of me.
I don't mind. But it ties in together. I think it has to do with being authentic and just
Well, I don't think that you
people.
really. It takes a special connection to really connect with someone. And you and I just started talking. I started seeing you once a month or so. I would come in for my infrared wraps. And if you guys haven't done an infrared wrap, you have to. It's like 900 calories in one session, 45 minutes. So if you're feeling bloated, that's like the thing you want to do. And then slowly, like, our friendship built, and we went out with Nada, who's a mutual friend of ours. And Nada's someone I've known since junior high school. But ironically, you and I are now closer, well, together. And I think we really connected on just the bond of going through a divorce, which for me, is still the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And it never really gets,
Ditto.
it gets
Same.
easier, but it doesn't get easy. When did you get a divorce?
2020, prime COVID time.
Wow. And you're a mom, you have 2 kids.
I do, yes.
Ava and William.
Yes, my pride and joy.
And how old are they?
Everything. Ava is 9. She just turned 9 in August, and William is 6.
So walk us through that time for you, because this episode really is going to be a very candid look into divorce.
Okay.
It's something I went through, and I don't mind talking about it. I know that other women are going through it, and, you just sometimes have to talk about it the way you would talk about it with a girlfriend. What was it like for you in that moment?
Before I left, it was, and I think a lot of people will relate to this, it felt like I was drowning, like someone was holding my head under the water. I was drowning. I was screaming for help, and nobody could hear me.
How long were you married?
10 years.
Wow.
And I was with him 10 years prior to that. So 20 years of my life was spent with him. And I think the first time I was ever able to actually breathe and come up for air was the day I told my dad that I'm leaving him.
Wow.
And I had his full support. And that was the first time ever I remember taking a deep breath. And this entire weight was dropped off of me, and I felt good. As much as it hurt, I felt good. And
what did that conversation look like with your dad?
My dad and I have a very special relationship. He is my true best friend. So I think the fear of telling him and disappointing him was stopping me from telling him. But one day it was just like, it was enough. I had to tell him. And I knew if my dad had my back, then it didn't matter what anybody else said. And coming from like an Armenian background, of course, like people have opinions and have gossip and all that, right? So I had to put all that aside and think about what was going to be the most important thing. If my dad was going to be okay with it, then I just did not care.
What did he
anyone
say to
have
you?
anything to say? And he literally looked at me and he said, I know you didn't come to this decision overnight, and I've seen you struggling, and I was just waiting for you to come to that decision. So pack your bags and come home.
Oh my God.
And literally, it was one of the best moments of my life, as much as it sucks
Don't you
to
feel
say
like
that.
a kid again in
Yes,
that moment?
yes.
Like you're finally able to surrender to a love that you once knew. I mean, you always
Absolutely.
feel that love, but when you become a parent, when you become a wife, it changes. And then
Yeah, you have
when
to
you
put on
have,
this strong face
right.
constantly. Yeah.
Okay. And so a lot of people ask me this, and it's so hard to answer because it's different for everyone. But the main thing is, how did you know when it was over?
My case is a little different. We're dealing with like addiction and stuff here. When I suspected things were going south for a long time, however, I didn't have proof. And the day I decided that it was done with was the day I had proof. And I didn't want to raise my kids. You've met my kids. My
Of
kids are
course.
very gentle. They're very, their temperament is very easy.
Best behaved kids ever.
So I didn't want them to grow up changing that temperament. And I hardly ever raise my voice at them. It's very, this mellow, very understanding. They were very mature at a very young age because I always spoke to them in a different demeanor. So all of a sudden, my house was this chaos. It was constant yelling and fighting at all hours of the day. And I was noticing my kids were scared. And I didn't want them to think of the place that they have the biggest peace as the place they have to run from. So that was my ending point. And I had a responsibility to give my kids a good life, a peaceful life, even if it meant that only one parent was going to raise them. But I think that's better than them having to, when the school bell rings, for them to think, oh, crap, I have to go home and I have to deal with mom and dad's drama. Like, I didn't want them to resent him or me even, because at some point they were going to start resenting me because I wasn't strong enough to leave, or I didn't stand up for them either, right?
Right.
So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know if they'll resent me or not.
No,
But
you're such a loving mother.
thank you. So are you.
Thank you. I feel like we're always taught stay for the kids, and
Yes.
you take that responsibility very strongly. I know for me, it took me 2 years, I want to say, until I really came to that decision. And if I didn't have children, I probably would have come to that decision a lot earlier and easier, and it would make the months after a lot easier. But I also feel like sometimes we leave for our children because you want to be a better parent, and you know that you'll be a better parent outside this marriage because you'll be a happier person. But for
Absolutely.
you wanted to create an environment that was just better than the environment that they were growing up in.
For sure. I left for my kids, and they are the reason I am the person I am today. Solely them. They are the reason I am successful. I'm happy. There's constantly a smile on my face. I'm sure you see that too. It's very rare to see me without a smile on my face, and they are that reason. And I owe them everything I do. And as much as I struggled in 2020 was one of the hardest years of my life. 2021 was the year I learned about myself and healed a lot. And 2022 was the year I blossomed. It was weird. So it took time.
Yeah, your glow up's been amazing, which we're going to get to.
But it took time. 2020 was one of the messiest years, not just because of COVID. And just my divorce alone was ridiculously messy. My divorce took a good 3 years to finalize. And
Wow.
It started in 2020 and didn't finalize until December of 2022.
And everyone has a different divorce story. In my case, and you and I have talked about this a lot, it doesn't have to be a case of infidelity. It doesn't have to be a case of substance abuse on, one or the other partner. It doesn't have to be anything salacious or drama. It could just be two people drifting apart, which is what happened in my marriage. And at the same time, I think when you change and you don't feel aligned in this space anymore, and you find yourself literally burning out, trying to upkeep everything and upkeep this image and upkeep like everything you promised to be, right, to yourself, to your husband, to your kids, to society, to your family, and you get so caught up in that, you forget who you are, literally. And
You become someone's
hit a wall.
wife, and that's
no,
it.
I hit a wall. I literally broke down, and I had probably a nervous breakdown. If I look at it now in retrospect, not like a, it was invisible to anyone. I was literally in rooms where I was smiling and nodding my head and having small talk with everyone, but on the inside, I was like looking for the exit because there was something very profound happening within me, and the only way to really understand that was to just take time for myself. I went to see a therapist.
Good.
I did a lot of introspective work. I was hiking a lot, spending a lot of time by myself, and taking inventory of all the places in my life that I don't feel aligned. And my marriage was one of them. And it's the biggest heartbreak when you also love that person, when you're also really good friends with that person, but you feel like this is no longer the place where I want to be. Coming to that realization is the saddest thing.
It really is. No matter how you get there, it's really sad because you're leaving behind parts of you. But, look at it this way. Now, at this given moment, you are the true you.
Getting there.
Yeah. And you probably lost yourself at some point while you were married and while you were in that like hustle and bustle of that upkeep. So now you're finding yourself all over again. And how good does that feel? Like right now, I'm the truest and most me that I've ever been. And like my parents even say it. They're like, she's back. And it took 20 years for me to come back, And
it's crazy. Yeah. My family said the same thing to myself. And they didn't say this in a negative way, but they knew my spirit before, Yeah. And again, this is not in a negative way. I love my ex-husband. He's the greatest person. But it was a different me for a long time. And so after my divorce, we went to dinner. It was for my birthday. And one of my family members looked at me and said, your energy feels like you again when you were a kid, when you were 13. It's crazy what happens to you when you choose yourself again. And when you just...
And there's nothing wrong with that. People think it's so wrong and so selfish. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's difficult because you have kids.
Yeah.
But
really if you don't choose yourself, you're not going to be the best mom.
That's true.
You're not going to be the best you. You're not going to be the best news reporter. You're not going to be the best podcast host. You're not going to be the best you in any aspect of your life if you do not choose you.
Well, when you're that conflicted, I also think it's really difficult to access that part of yourself that feeds inspiration and, lights you up from within to do different things that are going to be a bigger, better you. Okay, so let's go back to, it's 2020, what a year to get a divorce. What did those first few months look like for you?
Very negative in every aspect.
It's a dark, dark place.
Yes. From my bank account to my life to my soul. My brain was even negative. I only thought negative things. As much as it felt good to have broken free, I was very negative, and I was. And I started meditating.
Because you're looking at all the negatives, right? You're looking at, what did I do? Why did I make this choice? At least I was in a safe place to some extent, right? How am I going to do this on my own?
Am I going to be able to do it?
I rented a place. I've never rented. I mean, I have rented a place, before I was married, but
yeah, I was renting a place too.
How am I going to do this? I remember one day, oh my God, it was the worst day. It was probably the first week of my divorce, and it was pouring outside.
Oh.
I had gone out with my girlfriends before, and obviously I was really upset. So I had one too many glasses of wine. It was just us five, and I was really breaking the news to them too. Because I had kept my divorce very much a secret from a lot of people until it was finally there. And I'm at work. It's like 3 a.m. because I wake up so early. I'm a little hungover. My head hurts. I'm waiting for a burrito. Sorry, it's not 3 a.m. I've been up since 3 a.m. It's like 10 a.m. My son, Chris, is calling me from school saying that he's sad. And I'm crying, bawling, because I'm hearing my 7-year-old at the time say, Mommy, I'm really sad. And it was just like, I was ready to drive my car off a cliff because I was that at a low. And you're thinking, what is this? Is it always going to feel this way? And I mean, those are the moments, I will remember that day for the rest of my life. I was on the phone with his teacher explaining the situation in tears, and I have to go live in 5 minutes, and that was just the pattern. I was crying, going live, crying, going live. And in that moment, I realized, I'm not made of steel. I'm going to break down, but you have to let those breakdowns happen.
You have to. You cannot silence them at any point in time. No. And my kids saw me cry too. As much as they saw me be brave and strong, they saw me cry. And I wanted them to know that it's okay to feel those emotions. Obviously, they never heard me on the phone with their dad. They never saw any of those things anymore because I wanted the safety for them and I wanted the peace for them. But they saw me when I was sad, and I explained it's just a difficult time for mama right now, and we're going through a lot of stuff. Things are changing in our lives, and it's totally okay to be sad.
How did you have the conversation with them? What did you specifically say to them?
About why we're separating.
Yes.
So like I said, our case is a little different. I don't know if anybody else is dealing with that or not, but I explained to them that we cannot see Papa for a while because of the fact that he did something that made him very sick. And until he decides that he wants to get better, we can't see him for the safety of all of us. And of course, my son was 2 at the time and didn't quite understand the concept. And Ava was just like, why is Papa sick? Like, can we help him? What can we do? And she's this like nurturer and this like big heart. And I explained that it's not something that he got sick from. Like, it's not like a virus or a common cold or whatever it is. He decided to do this. And again, until he decides that he wants to get better, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And so they understand that. And they're intelligent children. And you would be surprised how much kids understand.
Smart. Yes, they do.
You would be surprised. And it took them minutes. And they obviously, our house is the type of house that everything is open and honest. And if you have any questions, you talk about it. He's not off limits ever. They can talk about him. Ava has a lot of great memories with him. In fact, he was an amazing father to Ava up until shit hit the wall, you know? So I will never take that away from her. William doesn't have much with him. And it saddens me that it's like that. But in a weird way,
it's kind of memory of all of you together.
It's more easier for him to get through life because of that. You know, I see stuff in Ava where she wants to talk about it, and I'll always tell her, like, it's okay, Mama. It doesn't hurt my feelings. Like, you're welcome to share things because these are your memories. You're entitled to them. So nobody can take that away from you.
Right. You have to daily choose the high road.
Absolutely.
And it's very hard because there are moments where you will have a heated conversation with your ex because, let's face it, you're getting a divorce. It's hard. And there are a lot of intricacies there that will bring out the worst in both parties. But you have to still, for the kids, you know, I always say, Mommy and Daddy love each other. We love you very much. We're always a family. We're always going to be a family because I feel like, and a lot of studies have been done on this, children only are truly affected by divorce. And I'm a product of divorce. I'm also speaking from experience. They are very affected by it when they feel that they come from a place of dislike or hate. But when they feel that, okay, this is the dynamic in my household, and it might be the dynamic in so many other households, they just don't know it yet because they're young. But as long as they realize that there is camaraderie and understanding and love, and both parents love them, they kind of grow up thinking, okay, this is just a new normal. The other day, I heard Chris explaining to his friend, you know, I have 2 houses now, and I have, my mom and dad have like 4 cars between the 2 houses, and I get 2 vacations, and I get 2 Christmas trees.
He's
and
looking
I get
at the brighter side.
Right. So, and I'm like, wow, this kid, you know, he's looking at the brighter side. But there are other moments where I can sense sadness, and you have to deal with that too, because I feel like, you know, it's never, oh, we got through the hump and it's all great now. No, there are days where it's going to break your heart. And there are days where you're going to say, oh, okay, we're moving forward.
No, for sure. We're coming up on 5 years, and it just does not get easier.
No, it doesn't.
I promise you that.
But I think one really important thing when you're going through something traumatic like that is to really sit with yourself. And I say this a lot because I genuinely understood what that is this year. I think when you are trying to process all your feelings, right? It's like divorce is almost like grief. You are mourning the loss of a marriage, whether it was a good one or a bad one. You're mourning the loss of a life that you once thought was going to be forever. And you have to really, really sit with those emotions and get very comfortable in the uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're never going to heal. You're just going to replace one relationship with another relationship. You're going to replace it with bad habits, coping mechanisms that are maybe not healthy. I went through a 6-month period where I honestly wasn't going out at all. My girlfriends would say, let's go here. Or, you know, why aren't you have freedom, go out. I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to spend excess money on random things. You know, I'm more responsible. And I just wanted to sit at home and sit in my shit, as I say it. And that's all the emotions.
But were you able to process during that time, or were you pounding yourself down?
No. I mean, it's a storm, right? It's everything. You feel regret in some sense. You feel, no, I did the right thing. It's not linear.
Constant battle.
The journey is not linear. It's one step forward, two steps back, and then one day it's two steps forward and just one step back. But it is movement forward. But I'm saying the only way to heal is to acknowledge what you're going through. What was that like for you in those months?
So for me, nobody in my circle knew the troubles I was going through. I have this weird loyalty thing where what's mine is mine, and I like try my best to fix it myself before asking for help.
I'm the same way.
So my closest people found out about my divorce when I filed for divorce. As much as that sucks, but honestly, in a lot of ways, I was embarrassed because it felt like I failed. I failed in this. It's a task, it's a duty, it's whatever it is, right? I failed at it, and I was embarrassed because all my friends were married, all my closest people were married. I was the only one getting a divorce, and I had failed. And so during that time, I isolated myself a lot, not just because of COVID, because COVID started in March. So January and February of 2020, I was completely alone and didn't want to see anyone and didn't want to talk about it, in all honesty. I think nobody knew the reason behind my divorce and why I was getting a divorce. Even my family didn't know until August of 2020. And I know August because that's when my divorce got extremely messy.
And you don't owe anyone an explanation.
You don't, ever. Nobody does. No. But it's still like, I felt like it was a duty of mine to kind of like explain why after 20 years, why now, you know? And also, honestly, rumors started rising that from his side that this had taken place because I had cheated on him, and a lot of other messy things that not even worth getting into detail. And, you know, I took it for some time. And then one day it was just like, it's enough. I'm not taking any more of this crap. And if you've ever been in a relationship where it's like mentally abusive and narcissistic and the runaround and the gaslighting and all that, you take a lot of crap.
You get very tough taking a lot of crap.
Yeah, you don't realize how much you take until you finally stand up for yourself and you decide you're not taking it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's
learning to set those boundaries.
Yes. And that's when I felt phenomenal. And I stood up for myself and my children, because my reputation is my children's reputation till some degree, right?
What was that breakthrough moment for you where you just, and it really is almost like, it's like an epiphany. I experienced it and I'll talk about it in a minute, but like you wake up one day and you're just like, it kind of makes sense now why I did this.
So let me tell you about the breakthrough of why I decided to leave, and then I'll tell you that breakthrough. Okay. So my best friend in the whole entire world, I owe her everything for this happiness that I have now. And I will tell her forever, and I'll tell people in every setting that the reason why I am this happy and this free is because of her. And she is a product of divorce, and she's one of the most successful and amazing human beings in the entire world. And one day I was looking at her.
Who's this friend? I want her to be my friend.
She is your friend.
Oh, okay. Got it. Now I know who it is.
So she is.
She's a force.
Powerful.
She's going to be.
She's powerful and she's incredible. And
yeah.
I looked at her and I was going through, like, nobody knew what I was going through, but I was drowning. Okay. And I was horribly depressed. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, oh my God, she became this successful, powerful human who has the best head on her shoulders. And her mom raised her.
Single mom
by herself back in the day. And I can't do it now. What's stopping me from doing it now? I have all these resources. I have the most incredible people backing me. I'm not alone. Yeah, I might have to live with my parents for a little while if it took that. But, I didn't even have to do that. I lived with my parents for a month because my place was under construction. And it just made sense to do that. But I didn't rely on anyone because you align your life differently. It's weird. And it aligns for you. If you trust the process of the universe, it aligns for you.
Surrender, yes. Big time.
And I detached, like I've told you a million times. I detached from
we're going to talk about detachment.
The outcome of everything I did. But because for a while I was clingy. I was like, why is it not happening? Why is it not happening? Why is it like this? Why is it like that? Why can't I be like that? Right?
Because you're stepping ahead of your own timeline.
Yes. And then I stopped. And then, so yeah, she was the reason that I did all that. And May of 2019 was the day, I think it was 23rd of 2019 was the day I realized that I'm leaving. I didn't leave until January of 2020.
But women mentally leave long before they physically leave.
Yes. And a lot of things took place in 2019 that stopped me from leaving. The death of my grandmother, who was one of the most important people in my life. And certain things like led up to that. But finally, the breaking point was literally New Year's Eve of 2019 going into 2020. And that was my breaking point. It really was. But in 2020, what the breaking point was for me to stop the narcissistic abuse and all that was, it was affecting my children. So in our house where my kids, and I say our house because my parents and my sister play a huge role in my kids' life. So we're constantly involved with each other. And in our house, I had forbade my family from mentioning his name in a negative way. So if you can't say anything positive, don't say anything at all in the presence of my children. Out of respect for my children, because it doesn't matter whatever it is, at the end of the day, it's their father. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know what kind of person he's going to be in the future.
You don't ever want to close the door on a good relationship.
And
you want to leave
them
that door
to have
open.
that option to decide for themselves if they want a relationship with him or not in the future. And that's up to them. And I will respect whatever decision they make. But my kids would go over to their house for visits. And he was living with his parents. And they would come home and Ava wouldn't talk to me for like 2 days. And if you know Ava, she is attached to my nose.
She looks just like you.
She does. But she's so attached to me. She's always been attached to me. And so my kid would come home and she wouldn't talk to me. She had attitude and she was 4. Wow. And so I was like, where's my kid? And then so I would have anxiety leading up to the next visit. So these were court-mandated visits that the attorneys were putting into place and had to take place. And so finally I was like, okay, I have to stand up for my kids. I can't allow this to happen. But the universe stood up for my kids, as weird as that sounds. And as much as this sucks to say, but November 24 is William's birthday. November 24 of 2020 is the last time they saw their dad.
Wow.
It was their last visit with him, and their following visit was December 9th of 2020. December 8th, 2020, my dad was unfortunately taken to the hospital with a severe case of COVID.
I remember that.
And he was placed on the ventilator. And the 23 days that my dad spent in the hospital were the darkest days of my life, and I had been through complete hell in 2020. So look at that.
And it puts things into perspective.
It does. And so I called the person who was in charge of being there, because I wanted a responsible adult to be there. I can't even think of the term right now, but during visits with him, because I didn't trust him.
Chaperone.
Yeah, so I didn't trust him alone with the kids. So I called her and I was like, listen, my dad has a very bad case of COVID. The kids are exposed, I'm exposed. And his dad was way older than my dad living in the house. And so I was like, I don't want the kids to bring this over there and to somehow jeopardize anybody's life, because it was a very bad case, okay? Dad's oxygen was down to 80 something and he crashed at the hospital at 70, which is life-threatening. And they put him on the vent at that point. And I didn't want that to repeat for anybody. And they turned around and they said, I made this all up and I did it to keep the kids from them. And so I was like, okay, whatever. And after that point, they never made an attempt to see the kids again. In May of 2021, when I said it was my healing year, sadly, but I'm grateful for it, I won full custody of my kids. And as much as it sucks, but it's a good thing, because there's no more of that toxicity or that narcissism that could affect the kids.
It's funny.
Because it does.
Yeah, we say these things like emotional abuse, narcissism, toxic masculinity. These are things we've now learned because, psychology has become so common and so, well, I don't want to say common, but more popular, and we see it on social media. But try explaining this to, a patriarchal family or an Armenian man. We're Armenians, so that's, the reference I'm going to make culturally. Or to a Persian man, or to, a Latino man, a Mexican man, who have these very dominant personalities, that their behavior is very unhealthy because they just grew up that way and they have a lot of stress and they do it. They don't even understand it. It's like, it's so the root of so many of these issues is the fact that people are just unaware. And I'm not saying women are not, culpable for their own issues.
There's plenty of narcissist women.
Right, totally.
Yeah, and I see it on a daily basis, but it's about taking accountability. And I think one of the best things people in general, men or women, can do is to have therapy.
Yes. Did you do therapy after your divorce?
I did. I did therapy and I put Ava in therapy too. William was too little. I had
Chris.
William evaluated and he was too little and he didn't seem fazed by any of it. But Ava's therapist was amazing and I loved her and I loved the way she approached Ave and everything she did. And she put so much in perspective for her. And one of the things she said was that families come in different shapes and forms, and some families can be a mom and their kids, a mom and one kid, a dad and his kids. It doesn't mean they are not a family.
Right.
And this was one of the best things for her to say to Ava that mom wasn't saying to her, you know? So it was nice to have a third party say these things to her and bring it to light for her. And I heard her one day telling one of her friends who is also a product of divorce, and he's only child in this particular family. And so she was telling him, like, it's totally normal. That's just your family. And it's okay for it to be that way. It doesn't mean anything. And so the therapist explained to Ava and said, listen, a person could have a mom and dad in the household, but the mom and dad could be so toxic and so not okay that it doesn't mean that it's a good family. The important thing is for your family to be healthy, mentally healthy. And that's the goal everyone should strive for.
Absolutely.
And it was the best moment ever. And I'm so glad I put her in therapy.
One thing that I've learned in this whole process is you can't worry about the world outside of you. Because as it is right now, in my friend circle, I'm probably one of few who are divorced, okay? But I can't worry about that. And I can't worry about how my children are going to feel in that context. Why? Because I don't know in 5 years, maybe half of them will be divorced, God forbid. But I'm just saying, the world is constantly changing. You can't put your own life and happiness or unhappiness on pause because you are worried about how you're going to fit in society. Society is constantly changing. When I was going through my parents' divorce, I was literally the only person on the planet, I felt like, who had divorced parents. And it really affected my psyche. But I still, I was raised by a single mom, and I feel like for better or worse, I turned out okay.
You did.
And with my kids, I'm not going to chance it and say, oh, I hope they turn out okay. I'm giving them the best tools. I put my son in therapy as well. I explained to him, we're going to go see a professional problem solver. And he loved that. He started telling her about like his friend at school that bullies him, And so he started to understand. And I think what we're doing here in this case is actually, and what I'm more concerned about is raising resilient children. Children who are going to be able to adapt in any environment, who can go to school. And my children go to a private school, so it's a very cushiony bubble and, a lot of privileged families. I want him to go into any space and say, I got this. My family might look different, but that doesn't make me any different than you. It doesn't make you any better or worse than me. I would rather raise boys like that than boys who live in a life that seems perfect but doesn't feel necessarily right. And that's the biggest takeaway. And I had this I think when you're going through a big life-changing moment like this, you're always you're getting little downloads, little epiphany breakthrough moments. I had this one. I was sitting on the beach in Miami. I had gone for work to meet with someone. And I was sitting by myself at the beach and I said, you know what? This is who I am. This is the choice I made. I am a product of God. I did this because it's who I am. I can't deny it. I couldn't live in that space anymore. Otherwise, I was going to go crazy. So this is the choice I made. And my children, they've lived in my body. They will grow up knowing who their mother is, no matter what. And they are loved so deeply and so unconditionally that I think they feel that. And that's the best I could do is set a good example, create a healthy space for them, give them the best life I can give. And I know their dad does the same. And, we're all hoping for the best with our kids, whether it's a nuclear family or a divorced family. I hate the word broken family.
It's not a broken home.
It's not a broken home. I hate that, a broken home. Let's change the context, please.
The broken home is actually the other way.
Let's create a situation where we can have harmony between the two sides. My ex-husband and I will take our kids to dinners and we all talk on the phone every day. It's like we can change, not to say that there aren't moments where it gets, testy. It does. Of course, we're all human, but we can change it, especially in our cultures and in minorities. We believe that's it. You're divorced. You're supposed to hate each other. Why? Why do we have to hate each other? Why can't we be adults, understand that this is what it is, but for the sake of sanity and for the sake of our children, why don't we, try to get along to some extent, at least?
That would be the ideal, and you're living the ideal, and you're very lucky.
Well, you have to consciously set that example too.
People
And
become
not
extremely
get caught
bitter.
up in the small things and the little fights.
Yeah, but people become bitter. They do. Like my kids' grandparents. Look at it that way. Just
I
it
think
becomes
there's
this ego thing for
Yeah.
them. Like they have to pick sides, and it has nothing to do, or someone's right or someone's wrong. No.
it's unfortunately an old way of thinking.
Yeah,
And
you can't change them.
no, but we can change how we are, and we
Yes.
can change it for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little about guilt.
Okay.
Because I still feel that on a daily basis. You know, if something happens where I get triggered by something, and triggers, it's another one, you know, how do you deal with that guilt of the decision you made? Because at the end of the day, it's still a space where you feel like you are created a dynamic that's not fair to the kids. You know, how do you get over the guilt?
You don't.
You just deal with it.
If I tell you that you don't ever feel it again, then I'm going to lie to your face. But for example, William plays soccer. Majority of the time, soccer dads come and cheer their sons and give them pointers and all these things. But you've seen me. I'm the mom on the field, yelling and screaming for my son. Do I feel guilty that his dad isn't there kicking the ball with him?
I feel guilty when I'm missing out on time with my kids on days that they're not with me.
So I don't have that, so I can't relate to that. I guess in a weird way, I'm lucky when it comes to that aspect, as weird as that is. But there's guilt in different forms that you will feel. There was this time on the soccer field during practice that it was a rainy day, and not a lot of the kids had come to practice. And so the coach just made it a fun thing where the dads got on the field, and it was dads against the kids playing. And so Willie's standing there. And I was like, I'm not letting my kid down. Like, you don't understand. There was this like chokehold on my throat. Like the soccer ball was in my throat and I'm trying to swallow it just to get in there. And thankfully it was raining. So I got in there. I was the goalie and I was fighting with my son and playing with my son like one of the dads. And I had to do it. So fast forward a few weeks after that, William's leaving the house. He's walking in front of me and he turns around and he goes, Mom, you know, you're kind of like a mom and a dad. Aww. And he like shrugs and he like walks out, puts on his shoes and gets in the car as if nothing. And I'm there standing there like, my kid is smarter than me. He understands things better than me and he accepts things better than me. And here I am like a few weeks back, I couldn't swallow the freaking soccer ball that was in my throat.
Right.
And
see, I feel very fortunate because my ex-husband is very involved in their lives. And over the summer, he took them on vacation for a week. Oh my God. I was so happy that my kids are experiencing this. But at the same time,
I remember
it was
I
like,
came over.
You came over. I know. You kept me company. And that's, you know, another thing to talk about too, the importance of having like a support system, you know, outside your usual friends, because it's something so different that you're going through that sometimes your married friends, as much as they're there for you, they mean well, you know, they're a shoulder to cry on. I get it. But they don't quite understand it the way a divorced girlfriend gets it. And it's so amazing. And I still feel so fortunate to have you in my life for that reason, because you just get it. It's so important to
as
have
much
that.
as it's different, you get it. You do.
Yeah,
and
you do get it.
I was very fortunate to meet a lot of incredible women during this journey. And they're all badass women. And
you give me the slap on the face all the time. Like,
I do.
Snap out of it. We're not going to go down that
because
road.
I had friends who did it for me, and it was awakening. And you need it. You need that rude awakening.
For anyone going through a divorce, we're here to slap you.
Ready anytime over a glass of wine.
Several.
But no, you need someone who can relate and who can kind of just put you on your path, because friends or people who have not been through it kind of either are going to give you the like, fine, get over it, like whatever,
Right.
or they're just going to be giving you advice that doesn't make sense because they're in this like fluffy pillow and don't understand that there's rough stuff happening out there.
Right, exactly.
You know?
And you don't necessarily want to put that on other people as well. But I think when you're going through something like this, the biggest thing is surrender. I had this moment. It was just a really bad week. My house was selling and I was very attached to that home. You know, I built it, I designed the whole thing myself. And it was a really, really, really difficult time for me because it was like really closing the chapter or closing the book on a specific chapter, closing the page on a chapter. You get what I'm trying to say. And it was just a really hard time. I mean, I was so emotional and there was nothing I could do at that moment except just hit rock bottom, and just surrender to the fact that this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that weekend I was listening to a podcast. Khalil Rafati was talking, and he's the owner of Sun Life Organics. And he used to be a drug addict, went through therapy, and then before he went through therapy, he hit rock bottom as a drug addict and said, "God, I give it to you. I just surrender it to you." And having listened to that podcast, it's like those words were in me. And I sat in my room. I was bawling, and I said that to myself. My eyes were closed and I was not opening it for a good 20 minutes. And I just kept saying, "God, I give it to you. I don't know what to do in this moment. I feel very, grief stricken. I feel, helpless. I feel broken. I feel all those things, but God, I give it to you because I don't know what else to do in this moment, And it was like 20 minutes. I was just sitting there with that mantra in my head. And then I opened my eyes, and I'm not kidding you, the world was a different place. Because I just think you have to do that. You have to hit rock bottom to have a breakthrough. Whatever that breakthrough looks like for you,
To
it's
shift
different.
your timeline.
Well, I guess.
You shifted timelines.
I don't know if I shifted a timeline, but something shifted. I now had this new energy where I started shopping for my new apartment, and I was excited about it. I rented a place that I was happy about. It has great views, and it brings me joy in a different way. And I started decorating it differently, and I started just something changed, and new energy came into my life. New people came into my life, and new opportunities started coming into my life where I thought, in this moment where I feel like I've lost everything, I now have a blank canvas to recreate myself and my new life. And there's so much liberty in that once you can get over the hump of the sadness.
And you will have moments that you will come back down to that. It's just a matter of pulling yourself
it's not
out
linear.
of it. No. So one of the things that I've done that helps me come out of that dark spot, because you will somehow, it's very familiar. So you find yourself back there very frequently. And I remember we had just moved into our condo in November of 2020. Construction had just finished. We moved in, and it was very new, and it was very quiet, and it was very different. I had never lived in like an apartment or a condo. I've always lived in houses. So this was very different in every aspect. And it was just me and my kids. And I found myself in this very peaceful, very good place, and I was sad. And so I started reading a lot of books about like self-help and meditating and the law of attraction and all those things. And I started putting Post-its of different types of affirmations all over the mirrors in the house.
What were some of the affirmations?
I'm the best. I'm the one. I'm perfect. I rise above this. Everything with I. And I even put it in the kids' bathrooms. And
so they can say it.
William couldn't read, but Ava would say it and William would repeat it.
I love that.
And so it was all over in every mirror in our house. The cleaners would come and they would giggle. They would take it off, put it down.
I can imagine.
And then they would stick it back up.
I am the best. That's so cute.
So cute. And so they say it. Even if you see them, ask them. They'll say it for you. And it helped me get over so much of the humps, because I would wake up in the morning feeling bad for myself. Like, what have I done? My kids are waking up in a very quiet house, very lonely house, right? But it shifts you once you start saying these affirmations.
But quiet also means peaceful.
Yes. So I didn't realize that right at the time. You're still in that like very
it's all
lumpy,
how you
bumpy
assign
phase.
meaning to things.
Yes.
It's now the days when my children are not with me, instead of being sad about it, I create new opportunities for myself. Like this show, it's one of them. I'm creating new avenues for myself. I set that time aside to read, to hike, to do things that I like to do, spend time with my girlfriends, spend time by myself. I love time by myself.
I do too.
And you just slowly, day by day, find yourself again. And, let's please also talk about your glow up, because the Tato I met 3 years ago was 40 pounds heavier, did not have this glow, did not have this body. And I feel like how you heal on the inside really does show on the outside. Yes. What was that transformation like?
If you met Tato in her early 20s, this is what she looked like.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's like. All right. So it feels good to be back in my 20s. And it's nice to think about the fact that all this time I still wanted to be 21, and I look like my 21-year-old self now. So it's nice.
21 with 20 years of experience.
Yes. My oldest uncle, my dad's oldest brother, recently saw me. He hugs me and he goes, "You're back."
Oh, wow. I love
that was the first thing he said. And I was like, first, it took me a minute. And then I realized what he's saying.
Yeah.
And it felt nice to hear that from like your 70-something-year-old uncle, So
right.
Yeah, it feels great. It feels good. I feel like myself in my skin. Has nothing to do with the appearance. It's just what I feel like and who I am now. And
what are some of your daily practices? Do you meditate?
I do every
to
day.
get you out of that funk?
I do every single day.
I
It's very
meditate
rare
too.
to be in the funk
I
now.
love meditation, and I find myself now trying to teach people to meditate. I teach my kids to meditate. I teach my mom, not successfully because she's very old school. Can you teach someone to meditate? What are some tips you have?
They don't have to actually do the meditation where they have to lay down and zone out and stuff. They can be listening to meditative things and just be doing stuff around the house. It's about hearing that positive, the vibration, and also there's types of meditative stuff that are guided, right?
Right.
To hear that sound, to hear someone telling you that you're the best, you can overcome this, you are above all, and as much as that sounds kind of narcissistic to think, but honestly, you are.
But we are born
Yes.
to be our biggest advocates.
Yes.
We're just, society teaches us, especially in certain cultures, to be more demure. That's a hot word right now.
Yeah.
To be more humble.
Uh-huh.
And that's all true. You can do it with grace, but you have to love yourself first in order to love other people and properly take care of other people. It all starts from within. And so now I do too. I meditate every morning. And if I feel stressed out about anything, if I have a decision I need to make, I'm not sure, I literally have such a better trust within myself that I pause and I say, I need to really sit with this, and I meditate and I really think about it, and I come back, because I'm someone who doesn't make decisions from the logical side. I make decisions from my emotional side. Like, that's my human design. And that's okay. But you have to sit with your feelings for a minute and not be reactive, because people who tend to be emotional tend to be reactive, and you don't want to do that.
Mm-mm. A lot of people have trouble meditating and zoning out because we are in such a fast-paced lifestyle. They don't understand that you can take a little bit of time for yourself, and that's okay. So one of the best ways to get into it is to listen to audiobooks. Honestly, it's
I do it all day long.
Yeah. And once you start doing that, because we're not used to that, especially our generation was not used to it. We're used to actually reading stuff, right? Once you start listening to the audiobooks, you can actually zone out and listen to the meditative guides and so on. And it took me a little bit to get there. One of my favorite audiobooks that I listen to on repeat is Manifestation Babe. And it's just, I'm sorry, Manifest Now. It's from Manifestation Babe is a page I follow on Instagram.
I'll be your babe.
You are my babe. But
babe.
yeah, that book was one of the best books, and I listen to it all the time. And it's a great way to kind of teach yourself too.
Right. And so now you have all these tools and you're in a better place. Your business also really changed.
It did.
How did that change? Because coming out of 2020, what was that process like for you?
We were shut down,
to be a single mom and to own a business. How did you find that avenue for yourself?
So this was a blessing in disguise, actually, because of my divorce, because the business was in my name, but we had been together for so long, we had to kind of split everything, right? So I had to change the name of my business. I had to liquidate everything and start from zero. And in 2023, April, I signed a lease for the new space and opened Skin Deep LA. And it was very scary. Extremely scary, but with the support of incredible people in my life and the constant you can do this that I hear from the people in my life. I did it. And a year later we are thriving, and
you are. I mean, you
Yes.
guys are. I come there for everything, and I'm not just saying this, to promote your business or anything, but I feel like also with you were very just yourself on social media. Because right now, let's face it, the glow up community is huge and it's very oversaturated. So I think the only way to really cultivate a real following or customer base is to be real about what you're doing. So you're constantly on there saying, look, I'm getting this done, I'm getting that done. And as long as you're honest, people are like, okay, I want to do that too. Why are we shying away from it?
Why would I lie, though?
Right.
At 40, I'm not going to look like this if I don't inject my face.
We get Botox.
Literally,
strips.
regularly.
Yeah.
Botox is my best friend, and I'm due for a session, Dr. Pat. But yeah, you can't not be open and vulnerable. And I've been open and vulnerable even in the case of my divorce. I haven't shared as much as I shared with you on my social media, but you have to be raw, because you would be surprised how many women have reached out to me.
Same.
Yeah, and they're going through the same stuff, and they're so scared, and they can't leave because they are financially dependent on their husbands, and they can't leave because they're scared of what it's going to do to their kids. And sometimes you have to take yourself out of that bubble and put yourself outside like Ebenezer Scrooge and look inside and see what it's like without that happening. And you would see that it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's definitely going to be
opportunities
okay.
do come to you.
They do.
You know, when Oprah always says, and I love this saying, she says, when you get clear on what you want in life, the road clears up. And it really does. And
That's
the road
part of detaching.
does, yes, the road does rise up to meet you. Okay, detaching. Let's talk dating. Post-divorce. My dating life is non-existent. So when did you first start dating after your divorce? And what's like a normal time?
I don't think there's a normal time. Personally, I was kind of disgusted by the idea. I think that's the best term I can use of having someone in my life. So my mindset was either someone's going to add to my life and not financially, but add to my life. You're going to stimulate my brain. You're going to give me experience. You're going to make me yearn for the fact that I can talk to you. Outside of that, I don't care. Like, I can have a friendship with anyone.
Isn't that the best thing? I mean, now when I look forward, I don't know what I'm going to want, right? I'm still discovering that. But the greatest, most liberating feeling, and I have to tell you, I'm 38 years old, I have two children, there isn't a biological clock. You know, you're not going to compromise anymore. You're not going to ignore certain things and settle, you know, because you don't need to. You know, you're in this position in life where it's like, you're either going to add to my life or you're not going to add to my life, because I've already lived that life. I've seen the inside. So I can choose now in a much better way. And that's a very special like place to be, I think, that most women don't think they'll ever get to post-divorce. And men, you know, quite frankly.
Post-divorce dating is very tricky, very hard, very weird. And you have to understand that you're coming into something, especially if you date someone who hasn't had any like experience with kids. They've never been married. They don't have kids. It's really difficult. So you have to kind of be mindful of those things because they're not going to understand your dedication to your kids. My first experience was with this amazing man, actually, and he taught me a lot about myself. I didn't date him for a long time. It was just like a few months and stuff, but he made me understand the person I am. And in a weird way, like you discover that you're really a queen. You are, and you need someone to bring that out in you because you were broken for so long, right? And so, unfortunately, our relationship ended. After him, I didn't really date much. I had this 10-day rule I had set forward for myself. So it was 10 days to talk to someone who was interested in me. And in that 10 days, their red flags somehow would pop up. And so I wouldn't waste it like a nice outfit.
See, you're a wealth of knowledge.
So all my like divorced friends were doing this 10-day rule, but it was great because I didn't have to waste like a night out or getting babysitting for my kids or even a beautiful outfit and getting ready for someone who didn't deserve it.
Right.
You know?
That's what I'm saying. You get to be more selective.
You do.
Because you're not eager. Do you find that it's like lesson after lesson, but you learn about yourself within those lessons of dating, you know, because I feel like if you've been out of the game for a long time, I have 16 years. I have no idea like how
I didn't even know how to
I'm
date.
This awkward like hi person. But it's like, how do you do it without getting too vulnerable again? Like, what are these new attachment styles that you might have? Like, how do you sort of date without getting too attached in the beginning, you know, because you've been out of the game for such a long time?
You won't get attached because once you're divorced, it's weird. There's this boundary that sets forward for yourself without you even realizing. I'm fortunate enough to be dating someone for 2.5 years. I'm going to keep him anonymous.
Yes, let's preface this that she has a great boyfriend now.
I like to keep our love like private. I'm sure you see stuff about him on.
I think I've seen his picture once.
So yeah, he's you'll meet him. But my point is, it's just people have seen him out in public. I've seen clients out in public with him. That's not the thing. It's just it's nice. It's nice having this private love life.
It's just for you.
It is, and he's an incredible man. And once the person who's right for you comes your way, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with him. It would be nice to, but once the right person for that time, whatever that time is, comes into your life, you can be vulnerable. You can be you, and it doesn't break you. It helps you grow, actually. He is my biggest cheerleader. He is the reason I am as successful as I am right now, because he cheers for me repeatedly. He's the reason I'm in this chair right now, because I wasn't going to do it. And he was like, you have to do it. And it's nice to hear someone who hasn't been part of your like past, and he only knows you for this amount of time, cheering for you so loudly, where there's people that have known me for multiple years and they're silent.
It's such a beautiful thing that when you're ready for it, the right people do come into your life. You know, we started this podcast talking about how you came into my life or I came into your life right at that right time. And I feel like when you've gone through all the proper steps, when you go through something like a divorce, you've gone through the grief, you've gone through the healing, you've gone through the moments where you're going to, you know, learn about yourself and kind of reinvent yourself, find your feet again. That's when you can attract that new person into your life. And you can't skip those steps. Otherwise, you're just going to attract the same type of relationship over and over and over again. But until you go through that process in a proper way and really give yourself grace and time, you're not going to invite this new version of you and, you know, whoever's going to love you or be with you.
I manifested him into my life. I did. And I'll tell you how. So in 2021, when I said it was a year of healing and kind of finding myself, right? I tried the whole dating app stuff and meeting people. There was people I met like at parties and so, or I would be out and so on. But the slightest thing that would remind me of my ex-husband or something that would make me feel nervous, it was an immediate red flag. I would shut down. I would completely shut down. Like I wouldn't even be able to answer texts and stuff. And that sucks to be that person, but I couldn't. It was this very scary moment for me. And so it was like December of 2021. And one of my friends was on Facebook dating. And she's like, you should do it. You should try Facebook dating because you kind of see their profile and you kind of see who they are. Like you won't see that you'll know if they're married.
You can do a full stalk of their page.
Yeah, you can. So I joined. So I joined Facebook dating, and I was just 37 at the time.
Right.
And so all these like 26-year-old, 25-year-old boys are like hitting up my page, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah,
like,
no, thank you.
No, I'm not here to be your mom.
Or
like,
your
it's not
sister.
happening. Yeah. So I remember I messaged my friend and I was like, what the hell is this? It's all young kids. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And if you've been following my page or whatever for a long time, you know that we do this annual New Year's trip to Cancun with my entire big family.
Yes.
And so we were getting ready to leave for that trip. And that day that I'm like yelling at my friend, our flight gets canceled. And so I'm on the computer trying to rebook the thing, and she's yelling at me through text, like, just cancel your profile. Why are you picking at me, like bickering at me, all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'll cancel my profile. And in the meantime, I'm booking our new flight out to Mexico. Book the flight. I'm on the airplane. And I'm like, I want a good man in my life. I want someone older than me. I want someone who's grounded, who will understand my beliefs the way I am, and who is going to test me and push me and help me grow into the version that I'm supposed to be. And I left it at that. I went on my trip. I came back, and we always come back January 5th, 6th. And on the 13th, we were leaving for our one of our friends who had just gotten divorced. It was her divorce party in Vegas.
Wasn't mine.
I know. At the time, it was from my group of friends, and so we were leaving for her divorce party. So we're leaving Friday morning, and it's Thursday, and I get a like on Facebook dating. I hadn't deleted my profile. I had forgotten to delete my profile, and Facebook is something that we don't log into that often. So I had logged in to send pictures to my aunt in Kuwait, and so I see that I have a message from this particular man, and I look at his profile and I was like, okay, he's older than me. He has 2 kids. He's divorced. He has a great career. Okay, I'll swipe for him. But he was not my type. Like, looks-wise, was not my type at all. But everything else in the profile fit. So I was like, what's the worst that can happen, right? If anything, I'll meet someone who might be a friend of mine for life. So I swiped for him. He messages me immediately. I'm like mesmerized by your profile. I need to take you out immediately. And I was like, oh, that can't happen
So
because
romantic.
I'm leaving for the weekend with my kids, without my kids, with my friends. And I don't like to be away from my kids that long. So it would have to be when I get back. And he's like, okay, as soon as you get back. So I was like, okay, when I get back Sunday, let me have at least Sunday and Monday with my kids. And then I will go out with you on Tuesday. I broke my 10-day rule.
You got to break the rules to break through.
I broke my own 10-day rule for this guy. And then normally anybody else that I had gone on dates with or whatever, nobody knew where I lived. Nobody picked me up from my house. I met them. I broke another rule. He picked me up from my house. And it was just very comfortable. And the first conversation was good. And our first date felt like we had been together forever. And it's just been like that.
Yeah,
since then.
I
We've
feel
had
like
our downs. We have moments that we bicker and whatever it is, but that's just part of every relationship. But
yeah.
I literally manifested this man the night I was leaving for Cancun, and weeks later, because I detached, he came into my life. If I had clung to that, I want this, I want this, I want this, I don't think it would have come into my life that fast.
Yeah, detachment is a beautiful thing. I am learning it now. And, just to add one more thing to what you're saying, you said he's not my type. Your type is based on a type you had. When you come out of a long-term relationship like that, you have to just be open
You
to,
do.
I don't know what my type is going to be because I don't know who I'm going to be in the next few years. And you manifested peace for your kids. You manifested this great business, a thriving business. You manifested this wonderful man. What next are we manifesting or hoping to break through?
That's a great question. I don't think I'm going to break through anything. I think I'm going to work towards my goals. I want to take Skin Deep further, and just have a more fruitful life and travel a lot more than I normally do. So those are the things that I want to do. I want to give my kids all the experiences in life that they are supposed to have and should have. And I don't think I have any more breakthroughs. I'm very content in my life. I'm in a place where I love who I am. I love what I'm doing. I love the people in my life. And it's a very good place to be.
Yeah.
It truly is.
Well, you inspire me every day. Thank you so much for
You're
coming
so
on,
welcome.
for being
Of
my
course.
friend.
Thank you for having me.
I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Breaking Through with Alina Abervian. For our community to grow, please like and share, and also leave a review on this episode. Of course, you can find me on social media and let me know what you'd like to talk about in future episodes. Nothing is off limits, so let's have some fun.